Hi, good morning and afternoon to everyone. Really excited to speak to you guys today, talk to you about upgrading from ATG to OCC. We're taking the approach of talking about how to de-risk the upgrade path, but it's also how to make you successful. So we take a real positive look at this. A lot of times you look at it from a de-risking standpoint, but really it's all about making you successful. And so we're going to be talking about that today, and I've got 7 steps to share, and I'm going to jump right into it. So who am I, and why do I have the right to be talking to you guys about this today? Well, I'm head of sales for Object Edge. We've been in the commerce industry for 20 years, and so have I. Worked for Oracle, was at JCPenney. I was the director of digital strategy. I led their PMO and user experience teams. I've worked for more than one ATG SI, worked at Razorfish and other SIs as well. So I've got I've kind of a 20-year veteran and seen a lot. And so I appreciate you guys listening to me. I guess the proof will be in the pudding when we get into this, and we'll go through the 7 steps. And then also at the end, if you have questions, be glad to answer them. So let's talk first. I'm coming from Object Edge. Why does Object Edge have the right to speak on something like this? Well, we're the #1 implementer of OCC in the world. Collectively, we've done way more than any of our nearest competitors collectively. So we've made a strong investment in OCC from the beginning, but we're also long-term ATG implementers. We've done a number of recognizable sites that you've seen on ATG. Some of you might actually be a part of some of our implementations. Because of our investment, we actually have done a number of innovations, including innovative hybrid architectures. We've also created our own utilities to migrate from ATG to OCC. We've got broad experience both in B2C and B2B, and we really focus on a consultative guidance approach that is ROI and best practice driven. And more recently, we've won various awards, including 2018's B2B Site of the Year. So, we are really happy to be a part of this community. We really appreciate Pipeline Pros inviting us to do this talk. And we want to, the whole goal here is to share, not to just be a plug for Object Edge. So the rest of the presentation will be focused on OCC and how to get there. So here we are, 7 key steps to OCC success. So here are the 7. I'm going to briefly talk about them. We strongly believe in defining your organizational goals and objectives. Determine your delivery methodology, waterfall or agile. Decide to work with OCC, not against it, will be a topic. Analyze your current ATG customizations. Design your architecture for the long term. Migrate via code versus manual processes. And then finally, prepare for frequent upgrades. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is that 5 of the 7 steps are up front, but more importantly, 4 out of these 5 relate to your mindset. This is not just a nuts and bolts process of how to get from ATG to OCC. It's really, there needs to be some organizational alignment. There needs to be a mindset for moving to ATG to OCC. There's a lot of paradigms that we're going to be breaking throughout the process that are going to be bringing you to more modern practices. That's not to say that what you're doing before isn't modern. There's just, with the cloud comes a lot of different ways of practicing your code development and your code delivery. So first is defining your organizational goals and objectives. So you got to ask yourself, why are you upgrading? You've got faster time to market, significant cost savings like your reduction in hosting, your reduction in your licensing costs, for instance, the ROI, financial growth, migration to the cloud, The consistent and frequent upgrade path might be really important to you. Modernizing your resources, shifting away from heavy back-end development, moving towards front-end development, so forth and so on. There's a lot of good reasons to upgrade to OCC, but what's really important is you being really firm and understanding yourself and understanding your organization as to what it is that you like to accomplish with this move, so you don't lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish. And here are some other important considerations. With moving to an API-driven commerce development approach, it opens up the ability to have a long-term architecture that is future-proof. So there are some technical reasons to be moving in this direction. The other piece, as I mentioned before, is modernizing your resources, meaning your team. As I said before, there is a shift away from heavy J2EE development and more of a shift towards for front-end development and extensions of what the API set provides you. And so your main resource pool will be HTML5, JavaScript, and AJAX resources. And then you also need to consider whether you're open to a minimum viable product approach, MVP, if that is something that you want to do or something that's important to you. That's another consideration. So here's a bonus tip, not necessarily one of the tips. Not one of the steps, but it is a critical success factor, and that is in leadership. What we have seen over and over in the various implementations that we've done is that upper management and their tie to the goals of the project and being personally tied to those goals are really, really important, because they're going to need to make some hard decisions along the way. And so they offer protection and support and change management for the project. They prioritize the iron triangle. I'm sure those of you that are familiar with project management are familiar with this, just managing scope, time, and budget. Some customers have the ability to manage and reduce scope if time is more of the essence, or if budget is more of the essence, or maybe time is not important and the scope is. That needs to be prioritized from the beginning, and it needs to be a part of the project throughout. You also need to aspire to get to as few decision makers as possible. Many times in large organizations, the decision making is highly distributed, and because it is highly distributed, it is hard to actually get a decision made, and there is little accountability across the organization as a result, and then the decisions aren't ever made in place and set in stone, and so those decisions can be overturned later, and it causes a lot of rework. So what we encourage our customers to do is really aspire to get to as few decision makers as possible, so that we can get down to business. We have kind of a funny saying of chickens versus pigs. This goes back to the old joke about participating in breakfast. Did the chicken or the pig commit to breakfast? And the answer is the pig committed to breakfast. The chicken just participated. And what we really do is we try to get people who are ultimately committed and accountable for the success of the project to be the decision makers and driving the project. Next is determining your delivery methodology. So this is a great, almost religious conversation, but this is an opportunity for your organization to do a delivery change. It doesn't mean you have to go to Agile. Many people are able to do rapid change through waterfall if that is something that they aspire to. I kind of jokingly said, go Agile or go home. It's just an opportunity. And with OCC, you do have that opportunity to drive rapid change, given that you're using front-end code predominantly and the APIs are providing back-end functionality. That shift doesn't necessarily have to happen from day one. It just may be a goal. What we find is with our customers is that like I would say 90% of our customers are doing waterfall today, looking to move to Agile, but we would not necessarily move you to Agile day one. We might move you to Agile 2 or 3 months into the project. Not that we want to change the way that we're doing business in the middle of a project, but usually within 2 to 3 months, we have the ability to know you as a company better, and you know us better, and that bond and trust is there in order for us to help you move there culturally to an agile delivery model. We do recommend tight adherence to methodology versus coming up with something special for your organization. The reason has to do with training. It's very easy to train a methodology versus a unique approach. So it just allows for scalability. And then finally, this is something that we commonly say is that culture change has to come along with whatever you decide to do, no matter what your strategy is. As Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, meaning no matter what your strategy is, if the culture's not aligned, it's not going to happen. So you have to really think through all of those aspects. The third step to a successful implementation is working with OCC, not against it. I'm going to start off with a case study. We work with a company in Canada, Princess Auto. They're a nice sized company in Canada. Really love working with those guys. They initially went with a small design firm to do their wireframes and comps, but then they asked us to come in later and do help them use out-of-the-box OCC capabilities, avoid unnecessary customizations, be compliant with accessibility laws for them and US, and do a number of things. But ultimately what happened is that we started identifying things where their designs, the design firm's designs were misaligned with best practices from not only an industry standpoint, but also one of the things that we leverage is what are called performance patterns. Performance patterns are industry best practices that have a numeric ROI behind them that says, hey, this is the best way to do something like gift cards. And this is the gift card page, as I'm giving as an example. There's this long form approach to selecting the gift card, adding it to cart, and so forth and so on. And then what we did is we showed them that as a part of the cart process, there's a much easier way to streamline and reduce the friction from getting from point A to point B and adding the gift card. And this is instead of a top-down laborious approach as before, this is a very easy to understand left-right approach that allows the user to easily digest what is the right way to add a gift card. And this is something that OCC does out of the box. It has a best practice built in. And so rather than paying someone to define something that is unique, it is best to go with an OCC best practice or something that has a performance pattern built to support it. And so we or your partner can advise you the best way to do this, and it's an important piece to work with OCC, not against it. And this is another part of this section of working with OCC, because this is closely tied. Over and over again, when customers do references or prospects are doing references, trying to figure out who should they go with, or should they go with OCC, talking with OCC references. Over again, time and again, you hear that the partner is really, really critical. And so here are a few tips on picking the right partner. Given normally you're looking for a technically advanced technical OCC knowledge and extensive implementation experience. That's what you are typically looking for. But I would add these key considerations. You want someone that has really great user experience expertise with the platform so that they can advise you on how to use the widgets, how to use the out-of-the-box features. Again, working with OCC, not against it. You want someone that can function in an advisory consultative role on how to best use the platform, and then also lead or help or keep pace with your organization in using modern practices. So I would say it's not just about finding someone that knows or is certified in OCC. There's some expertise and kind of beyond that you wouldn't typically find in a normal implementation partner that is really important to OCC and OCC implementation. And so the next step is analyzing your ATG platform. And I jokingly say automagically, and we'll go into why I say that. So your ATG environment, it may have started off as being something like a cute little plant, like from a Little Shop of Horrors here. But after you made some investment, got to know the platform, started integrating with it, it started to become quite a beast. And then finally, when all of your integrations are done, you could have quite a hairy beast on your hands. And so you're asking yourself, wow, how am I going to get this to a cloud platform? And so this may be some of your questions and concerns. You might have an issue with, you might have a lack of benchmarks or documentation on your current site. Many of you will have been on ATG for 7 to 10 years, potentially, and the resources that were originally there may have changed out maybe 2 or 3 times over the course of running and operating ATG. So understanding customizations, extensions, and integrations done over a period of time and what needs to be moved is going to be difficult. And then the other thing is you have a current operating site, and you want to reduce the impact to those operations. And so here's some key questions. How do we ensure we don't lose our important features? Do we need to migrate all of the legacy code? Can we take only what's needed? Can we migrate without hurting our business? Those are your questions and concerns, and that's very understandable. So we say, hey, this is what's important. Understanding your key components, extensions, and modifications, reusing what you've invested in Endeca rules and promotions and product types and product data. You also want to reduce human error, create an audit trail, and then conduct it efficiently without analysis paralysis and inform your future architecture. So one of the things that we really promote, and something that was born from doing ATG and Endeca upgrades, is we have an automated tool that automates the research. It takes a few hours to run once we're given access, and honestly, getting the access part typically takes 10 times as long as actually running the tool. But once we have access, we're able to run our analysis tool, create an audit trail, create an inventory of changes as reports, and then that gives you more time to focus on your future state architecture. We can give you a full-on demo of how this works, but that's not what the purpose of this meeting is. But if you have more interest in this, is something that we can be glad to show you. So the next step is designing your architecture for the long term. And designing your architecture for the long term, I did a talk about this at the Pipeline Pros Insight Conference last month, and went into greater detail So this is a very shortened version of this, and I'm going to cut to the chase really quickly. But your architecture, very simply, may look like this, where you have your commerce platform. You're directly integrated with third-party systems, your ERP system, so forth and so on. But the point is that the practices of the day did not include a middleware. It did not include extracting out your customizations. It was all about building directly on the platform, because ATG was a great development platform in addition to into being just a commerce platform. So this is going to be a change, moving from a monolithic commerce architecture to moving to a target architecture with OCC. Now, this is a lot to look at, but we change from this core piece being this commerce as a platform to being commerce as a service. These are the API sets that OCC provides. And then on top of that, they provide a storefront, which is multi-site. They provide an admin. They provide agent console, all sitting on top of the commerce API set. We highly recommend, or the reality is that you really need a middleware to communicate with those APIs and move data in and out and speak to the external systems. And then on the bottom left, you have your custom commerce services. This is where you will extract out all of your key customizations and put them in a place that can act as a service and for the long term be managed separately from the commerce platform. Now, why is that important? Because you're moving to OCC, you're moving to a SaaS platform, those customizations need to be externalized, because the upgrade path is something that constantly happens within OCC and is a huge benefit, but you need to be able to externalize your customization. This is best practice, whether you're doing this on OCC or ATG. This is the target architecture we would recommend regardless. This also sets you up, if you're going to use OCC, the storefront, admin, and agent. It is very capable. It is 95% of what we do. But if you want to move to a headless architecture, OCC does set you up for a headless architecture. Everything's the same except for the components that sit on top of the API set. If you're going truly headless, you would use something like Angular and React and develop on top of the APIs. But if you just want to use a different head, if you want to say that, you could use Adobe Experience Manager, Bloomreach, or Oracle Content and Experience Cloud, or any other content management system that you like. These tend to be the most popular. So, excuse me. So six is migration, and I use Automagically again. The first step in migration is deciding what to migrate and why. So, given analysis, you want to wisely pick and choose what to reuse, and you need to ask yourself some hard questions. Do I really need this customization? Is there something in OCC out of the box that is better, a better alternative? What does my partner advise? Sometimes it's really difficult for companies to listen to outside advisors, but in this case, Object Edge, we have a lot of expertise in this, and we can give you advice on the right way to approach something. You need to ask yourself about the ROI of that customization. Does it differentiate you, and how many customers are using that functionality? If you changed it, would those customers change to something else? These are good questions to ask yourself, and very important. And then once you're ready to migrate, we have a second half of our upgrade utility. The first part is doing the analysis piece. The second half of our upgrade utility is that we actually have a migration utility that allows you to migrate your repositories, catalog, profile, price list, promotions, and orders. It does an experience management analysis. We actually have a B2B component. We provide a full set of auditing reports so you can work against an inventory. There's a lot of things here. Now, you can do this manually, but we prefer not to do this manually because there are so many moving parts. There are so many decisions that have to be made, and there are so many opportunities to miss things that what we prefer to do is use our automation tool to really reduce the amount of risk because it does remove so many opportunities for human error. It's also done. It also saves 1 to 2 months, maybe even 3, in the migration process. And then last but not least, and I don't have any additional subsequent slides after this, but I'm just going to generally talk about it. You need to be prepared for frequent upgrades. Frequent upgrades are going to be new to you because today with ATG, even though there might be a new release that comes out once a year, or in the past twice a year or 3 times a year, you typically only did an upgrade every 2 to 3 years, if not 5 years, if you could get away with it. In this case, Oracle would prefer that you not get more than 2 releases behind. You do have the option to upgrade, but general guidance is that you stay up to date with the upgrades. So what does this mean? This means that you need to be prepared to test and regression test your site. So as a new upgrade is done, you can verify and validate that nothing has been disrupted. The other reason for doing that is that you also want to make sure that you are that if there is some legacy code that you have where maybe you created a feature that didn't exist, a custom feature that didn't exist in OCC, but now Oracle has released that function or feature, and now what you have created is technical debt. You want to be able to identify that and then create a plan for migrating and getting rid of that technical debt and moving over to OCC functionality. So one of the, some of you may have the hairs on the back of your neck sticking up thinking, oh, these frequent upgrades could be a significant operational risk. Well, one of the things that I won't sugarcoat it. We were really concerned about this as well when we first started supporting customers on the platform. In fact, we created our support teams more robustly as a result. But as it turns out in practice, over the last 2 to 3 years, we have really learned that the upgrade cycles have been really smooth because it's an API first architecture. The changes from one release to another have run really smoothly. Oracle does a really good job about making sure that any changes that they make from an API perspective or a widget perspective are backward compatible. And so over time, we've actually been able to reduce our support organization per customer to watch out for something like this. But it is something that needs to be considered. It is a paradigm change, but it is something that you need to be aware of to make yourself successful. So this concludes the 7 steps. I went through that pretty quickly, but it is just 7 steps, and I did want to leave some room for questions. I did want to give you guys my contact information and say thank you as we move into questions, but you need to reach out to me, you want to ask further questions, or you want to debate or ask questions about some of the things that I've said, I'm glad to talk to you about them. You can reach me at adam@objectedge.com, or there's my cell phone number. And then also please reach out to me in LinkedIn. Love being connected to the community and working with you guys. So with that, I'll say that's the conclusion of the presentation, and I'll open it up for questions.